and hear what I have to say. So imagine this, you're invited for a meal with the Queen of England or the President of America, and it's a formal meal, and this is probably what you will see on the table. Cutlery laid out systematically, one on top of the other. You'll be served in a sequential way. Soup, starter, main course, dessert, followed by coffee. You will eat using instruments from the outside to the inside. And that would be the proper way to eat. And then you come to India. And this is how the traditional meal will be served. All things simultaneously. The sweet and the sour, the rice and the curry, the dessert and the starter, all together at the same time. No instruments, you have to use your fingers. You have to mix and match. So if the same food is served to all of us, each one of us can mix and match it as per our personal requirement, using different foods in different proportions. So what you actually eat is not quite what you have been served. It's the ultimate in customization. Compare that with this meal where everybody will eat exactly what is served, maybe garnished a little bit with salt and pepper. If I were to ask you which is the rational way to eat, this way or that way, you won't get an answer. Everybody will agree that the food has to be hygienic, food has to be nutritious, food has to be tasty, served on time, but nobody will agree how it has to be served. This way or that way. And so we'll call a judge. And we want a neutral judge. So we shall call someone from China. And the Chinese judge will say, this is not the right way to eat. This is also not the right way to eat. This is the right way to eat. Because he will say it's bad manners to have weapons on your table. You don't keep a knife with which you cut people up, and you don't keep a fork with which you impale people. You have to cut the food in delicate, fine pieces and use the chopsticks to pick it up. That's the civilized way. And this is also uncivilized because you don't eat it with your fingers. At best, you can use a soup spoon or elegantly with a chopstick. Just by looking at people's different eating behaviors, we realize that different people look at the world very differently. Does it matter in the New World Order? How much do we focus on how we think? Why do we assume that people all over the world think in the same way and look at data in the same way and read patterns in the same way? That's a fundamental flaw that most people have. And that's perhaps the reason for conflict. You see, as humans, we want to understand the world. That's what makes us special. Apes don't do that. And they have, 3% difference in our genetic structure. Animals don't care. They don't want to understand the world. They're happy eating and drinking and mating and migrating. But we want to understand the world. That's what makes us human. So all of us want to understand the world in some way or the other. Make sense of the market. Make sense of business. Make sense of society. Make sense of morality, ethics, processes, law. Because when we understand, we feel more in control. We feel we know the world and therefore we can conquer the world. We need a map to negotiate the world with. Nature frightens us. The world frightens us. It is terrifying. Knowledge gives us the delusion of control. It's important. We need it. So how do I understand how people of different parts of the world understood the world? And that's where mythology comes in. Mythology is the study of stories, symbols, and rituals that recur in cultures. They keep coming again and again and again. We would like to believe that we are modern and we are rational and logical, but we still live in myth. Myth is the map of human understanding. So if I want to understand you, I just have to keep hearing what is the story you repeat again and again in every conversation. And that will tell me something about your personality, what your fears are, what your anxieties are, what your strengths are, what excites you, what encourages you, what disables you. Everything is revealed in the stories that you tell. It's quite easy once you get to know it, but I shall not talk about individuals, I shall talk about cultures. We shall look at stories around the world and quickly try to understand what is the Asian mindset. And to understand the Asian mindset, you have to first understand what is not the Asian mindset. What is not Asia? How different is it? And to understand Asia, you have to understand India, and you'll realize India is part of Asia, but not completely Asia. So we have to understand stories of humanity. You have to study all the stories to understand one subset. You have to understand the superset. And so let's begin. So some say that in the beginning there was chaos. So this is a Greek image of the chimera. So look at it, it's chaotic because it doesn't make sense. Is it a lion? Is it a goat? Is it a serpent? It's a combination of all these three things, and this is what you'll see in Greek mythology, which rose in the eastern part of Europe thousands of years ago. And so you want to create order. You want to categorize it neatly, put it in neat boxes, the serpent in the serpent's place, the goat in the goat's place, and the lion in the lion's place. And so you have revolutions. And so when you read Greek mythology, when you read the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Homer and the Hesiod, what you read is this obsession with revolution. The chaos, from chaos come the giants, from the giants are replaced by the titans are replaced by the Olympians, and the Olympians are afraid that the humans will overthrow them. This is Bellerophon killing the chimera. The great hero who brings order. This is the Greek way of thinking. But not everybody agreed with them. Some said, in the beginning there was order. In the beginning there was order, not chaos. Chaos comes later. It comes when you break the rules, when there's transgression. This is a different way of thinking. Where did this idea come from? And you find these stories in different parts of the world, not what you immediately assume. It comes from Persia, it comes from Mesopotamia, it comes from Arabia, it comes from the Near East, it comes from Egypt. All this is consolidated in modern religious ideas that we use today. But at a structural level, it speaks of this. It speaks that there was order and then there was disorder. When you disobeyed, chaos came. When you obey, all is well. So you see these two opposing strands of thought, a Greek thought and the biblical thought. In Greek thought, you have the notion of the nature as chaotic. Pan, who is half goat, half human, chaotic. And from Pan comes pandemonium. But the biblical thought is very different. They say, no, there's order first. And therefore the notion of the devil emerges, who is, interestingly, half a goat. So you have the Greek gods transforming into biblical devils, demons, Beelzebub. New ideas are emerging, crystallized in storytelling format, opposing forces. You have the notion of Chaoskampf, it's a German word which talks about struggle for order. This image comes from Mesopotamia, what is now modern Iraq. It's the image of Tiamat. It's from an oldest epic in the world called Enuma Elish. And that's the hero Marduk defeating the demon of chaos, visualized as a woman, with wings and half animal, half human, half bird, chaotic, frightening. You want to create order. You want the world to be a secure place. That's the terrorist. Doesn't make sense. Needs to be civilized, categorized, boxed either as upper class, middle class, or lower class in a proper socioeconomic category. Doesn't fit in. We all seek a single order. This is ancient Egypt. This image is about 4,000 years old. This shows the god Osiris. Look carefully at what he's holding in his hand. In one hand, he has got a sheep's crook, a shepherd's crook, to hold the sheep in place so it doesn't go around. On the other hand, it has a flail, which is used to separate the grain from the chaff, which is used to whip people so that they stay in line, in order. This is the Egyptian pharaoh 4,000 years ago, speaking of one single order. He rejects the barbarian. Like far away, the Persian kings would be thinking the same way. He doesn't know of the devil, he doesn't know of Pan, but he speaks of order. And these are stories coming from different parts of the world. The whole notion of one shall prevail. And then you move eastwards, and you go to the Far East, and you find a very different way of looking at life. You come to Confucius. And what does Confucius say? He says, order is above, in the sky. You have to replicate it on earth. In fact, when you read Confucian mythology, it speaks the Jade Emperor has a very good bureaucracy. And therefore, the Mandarin on earth needs to have bureaucracy too. And that's the Confucius order. The court culture, where the king knows what order is and everybody has to follow. But in China, there's opposition to this idea. You have the Taoist thinker who says, no, order is below, not above. Nature is organized. The day you start thinking of justice, injustice emerges. The day you create law, the criminal is born. That's the tragedy of society. The moment you build society, you establish law, you create the outlaw, the criminal, the barbarian, the terrorist. That's what you do. And so, in China, you have this notion of combat and conflict, the yin and the yang, above and below, the phoenix and the dragon. That's the phoenix, regenerating phoenix. And that's the dragon, imposing authority from the king's court. A very different approach. It accepts the existence of eternal struggle, that there shall always be conflict. One shall never completely prevail. In fact, if one prevails too much, it creates corruption. So you need an opposing force, a counterforce. And then you come to India. And India looks at the story very, very differently. So it says, in the beginning, there is nature. And nature is organized. But we don't like this organization. Because it is might is right. In nature, might is right. Survival of the fit. The strong shall dominate the weak. There is no room for the helpless. There is no room for the disabled. There is no room for one who cannot run fast, who is not smart enough. Then comes human imagination. And in our imagination, we say, you know what? The world can be a better place. We can have a better way of thinking. We don't have to have might is right. The strong can help the helpless. We can make resources and opportunities available for the less abled. That's human imagination at work. And so what do? We established society. And in Indian art, it's represented in the form of marriage between man and woman. So you see this very frightening form of a lady holding a head and knife. And of course, when the British saw this image, they first said, oh, this is devil worship. What they didn't realize, this was the goddess. Nature red in tooth and claw, as Tennyson said. And then comes imagination, which speaks of human capability, represented using male form. And then marriage between imagination and nature, the perfect society, harmony, mutual interdependence, conversations with each other. And then the problem starts, because who decides what is appropriate conduct in society? You can have many societies, not one. You can have North Indian society, South Indian society. In the village, you have different communities, different ways of thinking, different ways of engaging. You have people who are priests who have a different notion of society, businessmen who have different notions of society, kings who have different ways of society, traders who think differently. You have Chinese who think differently, Indians who think differently, Arabs who think differently, Europeans who think differently. Each one has a different notion of society, which is the right way. Should there be conflict between them? Should each and every society be allowed to exist even when they follow rules and norms that are unacceptable and unpalatable to us? Or do we compel them to follow what we consider to be appropriate? Should there be one, or should we figure out a way to harmonize each one? Allow the other to exist. Create energy that enables everyone to have their own place. Like this dance, where there are people everywhere, some in the center, some in the periphery, negotiations happening between the center and the periphery, negotiations happening between different elements of the periphery. Is it possible? And that's the notion. The notion is, in the beginning there is nature, then comes imagination, then comes society, then comes many societies, and the question of, should many societies coexist, or should we exist only in one? Can three coexist? Can your society coexist with my society? Can my society coexist? And can we both exist with the third society? And can this go on ad nauseum, ad infinitum? This is the root of diversity, where we allow the existence of other societies who function very differently from us. So we have three choices. We have control, one way and no way, my way or the highway. Conflict, allow that there will always be this conflict between urbanization and rural, between the East and the West, between Asia and North Asia. Or consideration, where we allow the existence of diversity. So this is all very theoretical. Let's see whether it makes practical sense. This is a single system. This is a road you see in New York, or this is, of course, South Korea. Look at the road, single order. Very well, you're familiar with such roads. This is chaos. This is order, according to us. Is this chaos? Because multiple systems are coexisting simultaneously. The road is also a marketplace. There is the road, there is the two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler. There are people walking on the road on either side, going in different directions. Is it chaotic, or is it the coexistence of multiple orders? How do you see it? Does it threaten you? If it threatens you, you will want to control it. You will think it is uncivilized and people have to be controlled and changed. This chaos kampf. Is this order sequential? When things happen very systematically, one after the other. Is this order? If this is order, then this becomes chaotic. Mixing and matching foods in different proportions does look chaotic if you belong to this culture. A single language on a single currency note, is this order? So if we were a global village, which language should we speak? A single language, English or French maybe Arabic? Or do we consider many languages to be chaotic? This is the Indian currency note with 17 languages, 17 official languages. There are 300 unofficial languages. How do you manage a country like this? I always tell people who talk about Singapore, I said Singapore has 5 million people, 80% of the same ethnicity. India has 1,200 million people and less than 10% of the same ethnicity. The rules of the game change dramatically. So we have choice one, annihilate the monster. So this is the first choice that we all have. That which threatens us, that frightening person who doesn't follow our rules of development. Let's kill him and categorize him and put him in a box or a museum. Second, appreciate the monster. This is an Indian folktale where a warrior is confronted by this great chimera multiplied by 3. He's part rooster, part peacock, part bull, part elephant, part lion, part tiger, part bull, part human, part serpent. What do you do when you're confronted with this? You don't try to control it, you surrender and understand it. And of course, the third choice is always there. Let the context and consequence decide. Let's look at the situation as it is and take a decision at that moment. Who are the people involved? What is actually happening at that moment of time, rather than come up with these great homilies and platitudes which go across space and time. These are the choices that we have. And these are the choices before you when you talk about securing Asia. And while everybody is looking very serious right now, may you have a great conference thinking about it. Thank you. Yep. Thank you.